This film is strictly for educational purposes only. OCO, my brothers and sisters, relatives, spiritual warriors, and free thinkers. Today, I will be covering some very essential information that is in fact available to the public, but nowadays, multiple distractions are set in place in order to keep the public unaware of particular situations at hand. It's quite obvious that something is going on, especially since we are witnessing tons of unusual activity taking place. Like, for example, we are witnessing the deployment of thousands of militant troops along with heavy artillery sweeping across the nation from state to state. Are we gearing up for some type of combat here, or are we gearing up for something else? Now, I'm going to play a clip of a press briefing that the entire nation saw live, but I will be pointing out what was mentioned in this briefing that is very important to note when answering this question.
News hours learned that the CDC picked up that there was some sort of virus happening in Wuhan, the coronavirus happening in Wuhan as early as December. When did the CDC start letting other agencies know that there was something in China happening, that this coronavirus was happening? And then when did the whole government approach start to happen?
So I'll let the CDC or Dr. Fauci, you want to talk to that? Secretary Azar, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so we were alerted by some discussions that Dr. Redfield, the director of the CDC, had with Chinese colleagues on January 3rd. It's since been known that there may have been cases in December, not that we were alerted in December.
Then, Mr. President, the other question I have for you.
Excuse me, we'll do it in a second. Let Mike, yes.
May I just have one more thing? There's been some discussion about China and what they knew and when they knew it, and I've been very critical. We need to know immediately. The world is entitled to know. The Chinese government was the first to know of this risk to the world, and that puts a special obligation to make sure that data gets to our scientists, our professionals. This is not about retribution. This matters going forward. We're in a live exercise here.
Interesting choice of words he used here, because if we are in a live exercise right now, then what does that entail? An exercise is commonly known as a way of improving your health by way of physical activity or any sort of movement, like walking, running, working, or rather laboring, or any other exertion of the body. Even physical training is also a form of exercise for the body. But wait a minute, this can't possibly be the definition of what she used, right? Would it make any sense to say that we are in a live training right now? And before you answer that in the comments below, let's take things a step further. When you hear the phrase, exercise your rights, this has nothing to do with your health in a physical or mental effort. In fact, according to the 1828 Webster's English Language Dictionary, the term exercise means to use or practice to acquire skill, preparatory practice. So it makes sense to say that you are using your rights, but does it now make any sense to say that we are in a live training or practice? Usually when you train or practice for something, those repetitions allow for the individual to improve their skill over time, which is no secret. But let's just say that we are in a live training or practice right now. What skill would be improved upon? While you're pondering on that question, I also want to point out that the company called Purell was under fire during the latter half of January of this year. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, took issue with how the hand sanitizer company Purell markets their products by advertising that their products will prevent and help stop the spread of things. The FDA issued a warning letter to Purell, indicating that the hand sanitizer manufacturer needs to, quote, amend uncorroborated statements about the ability of new hand sanitizer products reducing the transmission things. On the Perel website, it says that the main ingredient in sanitizer products is alcohol, and it is effective at eliminating or inactivating enveloped things. But the FDA says no Perel products have been tested against these things. So Perel can be marketed as a consumer and healthcare antiseptic, but not as preventative against things. The letter warned the Perel company that if it does not comply with the FDA's request and augment the selected statements found on their Facebook and Twitter accounts, Perel and its parent company, Gojo Industries, could face legal action. But what's very interesting to note here is that this company has been marketing its products this exact same way for years. So why would the FDA have an issue with it now? Also, Perel is not the only company that sells products for these exact same reasons. I recently purchased a container of Clorox Ultra Clean Disinfecting Wipes that claims right here on the container that it eliminates 99.9% of these things. Not only that, on the back of this container, it provides directions for use, stating that you can use this product to, quote, disinfect hard, non-porous surfaces. Wipe surface to be disinfected. Use enough wipes for treated surface to remain visibly wet for 4 minutes. To KVs, let stand 15 seconds. Let surface dry. For highly soiled surfaces, clean excess dirt first. End quote. Now, the V word has a marker beside it, indicating that it provides more information about which V words it is referring to at the bottom of this section. Look closely. Do any of these words ring a bell to you? And if these disinfecting wipes can eliminate 99.9% of these things in just 15 seconds, then it should make you wonder why these commonly known germs per se are being treated as if they are now somehow life-threatening towards everyone.
Avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people. Avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people.
Has something changed? And if so, what changes took place in order for the public to now witness frightening third-party testimony from their favorite Hollywood celebrities, for example? I find it very interesting to see doctors of the medical field openly speaking about this situation at hand.
I can't help but say something about this whole coronavirus thing, if you want me to. Yes. So, again, when you know Steiner, you have the answers to the test, but you have to then figure out the details. In 1918, after the biggest pandemic, the Spanish pandemic of 1918, Steiner was asked, what was this all about? And he said, well, viruses are simply excretions of a toxic cell. Viruses are pieces of DNA or RNA with a few other proteins. They bud out from the cell. They happen when the cell is poisoned. They are not the cause of anything. Diseases are poisoning. It's one of the reasons why vaccines, so let me skip that for a minute. So what happened in 1918? There was a huge, in every pandemic in the last 150 years, there was a quantum leap in the electrification of the Earth. In 1918, late fall of 1917, there was the introduction of radio waves around the world. Whenever you expose any biological system to a new electromagnetic field, You poison it, you kill some, and the rest go into a kind of suspended animation so that, interestingly, they live a little bit longer and sicker. And then starts in World War II with the next pandemic, with the introduction of radar equipment all over the Earth, blanketing the entire Earth in radar fields. First time humans have ever been exposed to that. In 1968, there was the Hong Kong, and it was the first time the Earth has a protective layer in the Van Allen belt, which essentially integrates the cosmic fields from the sun and the Earth, from the moon and Jupiter, etc., integrates that and essentially distributes that to the living beings of the Earth. And we put satellites emitting radioactive frequencies in the Van Allen belt. Within 6 months, we had a new viral pandemic. Why viral? Because the people are poisoned, they excrete toxins, they look like viruses. People think it's a flu epidemic. In the 1918 epidemic, the Boston Health Department decided to investigate the contagiousness of this. So they, believe it or not, took hundreds of people with the flu and they sucked the snot out of their nose and injected it into the healthy people who didn't have the flu. And not one time could they make the next person sick. They did this over and over again, and they were not able to demonstrate contagion. They even did it with horses who apparently got the Spanish flu. And they put bags over their head, and the horses sneezed in the bag, and they put the bag over the next horse, and not one horse got sick. You can read about this in a book called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, who chronicles all the steps in the electrification of the Earth and how within 6 months there was a new flu pandemic all over the world. And when you hear the normal explanations, how did it go from Kansas to South Africa in 2 weeks? So the entire world got the symptoms at the same time, in spite of the fact that the mode of transportation was horseback and boats, and there's no explanation for it. They just say, we don't know how that happened. But when you think about it, with these radio waves and other frequencies that some of you have in your pocket and on your wrist, you can send a signal to Japan and it arrives instantaneously. So any of you who don't believe there is an electromagnetic field that communicates globally within seconds just is not paying attention to this. And I will only finish by pointing out that there has been a dramatic and quantum leap in the last 6 months with the electrification of the Earth. And I'm sure a lot of you know what that is. It's called 5G, where they now have 20,000 radiation-emitting satellites, just like the radiation-emitting thing in your pocket and on your wrist and that you use all the time. That is not compatible with health. I'm sorry to say it, it's not compatible with health. That is a water destructuring device. And for any of you who say, yeah, well, we're not electrical beings, we're just physical matter, then don't bother doing an EKG or an EEG or a nerve conduction test, because we are electrical beings and the chemicals are only the byproduct of those electrical impulses. And I'll finish with, anybody want to make one guess as to where the first completely blanketed 5G city in the world was? Exactly. So when you start thinking about this, we are in an existential crisis here, folks, the likes of which humankind has never seen. And I don't want to go all Old Testament prophet on you, but this is something that is unprecedented. The putting of 100,000 satellites in the very blanket of the Earth. And by the way, as I was going to say earlier, this actually has something to do with the vaccine question. And this got brought home to me because about a year ago or so, I had a patient who came in who was totally fine, a surfer and all, and then he works as an electrician putting in Wi-Fi systems for very wealthy people. Electricians have a very high mortality rate. But he was fine. And then he breaks his arm and he gets a metal plate put in his arm. 3 months later, he couldn't get out of bed and was total, heart irregularities, just total collapse. The susceptibility has to do with how much metal you have in your body, as well as the quality of the water in your cells. So if you start injecting aluminum in people, they become receptors for absorbing increased electromagnetic fields, and that is a perfect storm for the kind of deterioration of the species, which is what we're now experiencing. And I'm just going to finish with one more thing, which I like too, is a quote from Rudolf Steiner. And by the way, this was around 1917, so it was a different time. In times when there were no electrical currents, when the air was not swarming with electrical influences, we're talking 1917, it was easier to be human. For this reason, in order to be human at all today, it is necessary to expend much stronger spiritual capacities than was necessary a century ago. So I'll just leave you with whatever you can do to increase your spiritual capacities, because it's really damn hard to be human being these days. Because it's really damn hard to be human being these days. Because it's really damn hard to be human being these days.